We are seeing changes in the Orange County housing market. This is Dean Odell with 7 Gables Real Estate, and we're going to look at the data today, and we're going to tell you what those changes are. So just hang in there and let's look at all these different charts we're going to be looking at today. And I want to remind you that this is the day we will be looking at the Tustin data chart from June. So stay tuned. Let's get started. Okay, so looking at this first graph, Orange County listing inventory year over year. Now we are the purple line, and look what's happened here. The purple line has gone flat on us. It did not continue to go up as it has been for the last few weeks. So kind of interesting. We're flattening out. Not 100% sure what that means yet. You could see the red line, which was 2021. The same thing happened. The orange line above that, you could see where it flattened a little bit later in the year, but it's not the first time we've seen this, but it's kind of hard to say where things are going when things flatten out like that. So let's look at where we are today. 3,052 listings 2 weeks ago, 3,048. So not much of a change there, obviously. And last year, 2,276. So I like to see that. We were 700 and got almost 800 listings, right? Almost 800 listings higher than last year, which is great, but you can see that we are still less than half of the 3-year average from 2017 to 2019. So looking at where we are today on the Orange County demand chart, these are the homes that have gone into escrow in the last 30 days. Today we are at 1,624. 2 weeks ago we were at 1,615, so had a little bit more. That could just be a timing thing, right? 9 more homes. And then last year, 1,560. So we're definitely doing better than that. We're up 64 homes from last year, but we have a whole lot more inventory. So 64 more homes on 800 more listings. Okay, so when we put those two together, we come up with Orange County expected marketing time year over year. And you can see again, we are the purple line, and we had a little bit of a drop by 1 day. Today, 56 days to get the average home marketed and in escrow. 2 weeks ago, that was 57 days. Last year, it was 44. So we are still slower than last year's pace, but you can see the 3-year average below that at 78 days. So you can kind of see how all these charts have been for the last few years, but it looks like we're getting back to more of a normal market. All right, so looking at this slide, this really just summarizes what we just spoke about. You can look at today's numbers versus last year's numbers versus the 3-year average prior to COVID. So you might just want to freeze this slide for a minute or so and take a look at that and see how it all compares. Okay, now when we take that Orange County marketing time and we break it down by price range, we can see that it is a hot seller's market all the way up to $2 million still. We are at a 49-day marketing time between 1.5 and 2 million, which is a little bit of a drop. It's the only price range, interestingly enough, where we had a drop in days on the market. So if we look at that next price range, 2 to 4 million, we could see that that is a balanced market. You can also see that it is 20% of the inventory and only 10% of the demand. So another way to look at this is, that's 2 houses for every 1 buyer. So when you have 2 houses for every 1 buyer, it does create a balanced market. Let's go to the next category, 4 to 6 million. You can see that's a slight buyer's market with 148 days. That's actually a little quicker than last year as well. Last year it was 217, but if you look at that inventory versus demand, you could see there you're getting to more like, 2.3 homes per buyer if you look at those 2 numbers. And then when you get to the deep buyer's market, the 6 million and over, look at that time that it's taking right now. Over a year to get your house sold for sure, almost a year and a half. And then the current inventory is 10% out there. A lot of higher priced homes on the market, right? And then you look at where's the demand, 1%. That's like 10 homes for every 1 buyer. So I think we all wish we were a buyer in that price range. We'd have some choices, right? So let's move on to the next slide. All right, taking a look now at the Tustin data chart where we compare the 3 zip codes in the Tustin areas. You're only going to find this information right here. So looking at the data chart now, let's look at what's for sale. And where have we had the biggest increase? Tustin Ranch, Tustin Legacy, up 225%. How about the new listings? Where have we seen the most increase? Most increase, 92780. It's up 47.6%. Look at 92705. It's actually down 33.3%. So now we're looking at the solds. And if we look at the 92705, it's actually down 55%. What's interesting about that is you look back up at what's for sale, and the inventory's doubled. So think about that. There's 48 homes that are for sale in North Tustin, but yet only 13 closings. Kind of interesting there. So there was definitely a slow period there. What do we think that was about? Well, that was probably about pricing, because we'll talk about that later. 92780 up 16%, 92782 up 50%. Let's move to pendings. Where have we seen the most pendings increase? We've seen it at Tustin Ranch and Tustin Legacy. Well, don't forget, they've also had the biggest increase in inventory. They got 26 listings now versus 8, so that kind of makes some sense. And then we look at months of inventory. Now remember, the sellers have been in charge of this market for a while, and there's been 1 or 2 months of inventory at the most. And now look at North Tustin, 3.7 months versus 0.9 last year at this time. Meaning the market in North Tustin has gotten 4 times more difficult to get a home sold. Okay, so it doesn't mean overall price ranges. You got to really zero in on what's going on, and that's what you need to talk to us about. But that market is definitely not what it was a year ago. And there's reasons why we'll talk about at the end. Average active price. Now, here's what's crazy. Look at 92782. Last year, $990,000. This year, 2.12. Wow, that's an increase right there. Let's look at the average sold price. Looking back, and let's use Tustin Ranch again, because it's had this giant increase. 1.4 million last year, 1.75 million this year. So yeah, there's been an increase, but not like the average active listing price, right? I mean, that's kind of an interesting stat there. So looking at the final sales price to list price, the FLP, if we look, everybody is getting over 100% of their asking price. Once their house is priced right, there should be a caveat there, okay? And then if we look at 92780, that's been the biggest change. Last year they were getting 105%, 5% over their price. This year, only 2% over their price. If we look at where is the original list price, the OLP to the final sales price, interesting there, we're seeing that in North Tustin, 101 versus 98 last year, and the other change was 92782, 104 this year versus 102 last year. So if you look at the original list price to final list price, if you compare those two within the 92782 zip code, you can see they're identical. What does that mean? That means they're pricing their houses correctly coming out of the chute. So if we look at the average days on the market, you can see in the 92705 and the 92780 zip codes, we are actually in a faster market. 92782 just slowed down just a little bit, but all that is good. I mean, what's the longest market there is 12 days. I don't think that's gonna kill anybody to wait 12 days to get their home in escrow. So let's move on to my advice. Okay, well, if you like all this stuff, why don't you just subscribe now before I give you my advice? Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And now let's move towards my advice. So if you look at the data here, you can see one thing it tells us is that the market in general has a direction and it has data that goes with it. But you really have to break things down into sub-markets because there's different things going on within different markets, different zip codes, different price ranges, which is why you really need an expert who understands this stuff to be advising you, whether you're a buyer, whether you're a seller. Now, we've been doing this a long time. Everyone on my team has been doing this a long time. 35 years in the business, my partner 50 years in the business. I mean, we've seen a lot and we can help you out. So what we'd like to do, especially you guys sellers, give us a call to get these houses ready, get them priced right, and get these things sold for top dollar while you still can. I'm not trying to be an alarmist. I'm just saying the market's getting a little wanky, okay? So buyers, you know what? Same advice as always, hang in there. Don't have FOMO. You know, you can see in some price ranges, the inventory is really built and you guys are getting a little bit more leverage. But the good houses, the well-priced houses, they're always gonna sell, okay? There was a time, I tell my team all the time, where we used to take 6 to 12 month listings in some price ranges, and we would still sell the houses within 3 to 5% of the asking price, okay? We have been living in, fantasy land as far as the market goes and the speed of the market. So the fact that you're seeing houses hang out for longer than they used to doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to sell. It just means it might just take a little bit longer to find that right buyer, right? So I would always recommend you just write an offer. Always just write an offer and see where it goes. So anyway, we can help you out with that. Selling lots of buyers' houses in this market right now. As a matter of fact, our buyer business is way up this year. So let us help you out. And we will talk to all of you in 2 weeks. See you then.